Hey everyone, welcome back to Reliable Prepper. Today we're going to be talking about some of the more intense, even scary realities of bugging in during a serious crisis. You know, for a lot of us, staying right where we are and hunkering down at home is the safest option when things get really unstable out there. But if we're not careful, bugging in can go wrong in so many ways, some of which can be deadly if you're unprepared. So today, I'm going to walk you through some of the darkest scenarios you might face when you're bugging in and hoping to outlast whatever chaos is outside. Each of these threats can put you in a serious bind, and I'll give you some pointers on what you might do if you find yourself up against these situations. Before we jump in, could you please give this video a like? And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to check out my Facebook page. All right, let's get into it. Let's kick things off with something a lot of people probably overlook: fire-based eviction. When we're thinking about hunkering down and bugging in, we tend to feel pretty secure about our four walls, thinking that as long as we're locked in and stocked up, we'll be all right. But fire changes that assumption in an instant. Imagine this scenario. You're deep into a crisis and you're sheltering at home with your family, maybe thinking you've got everything under control. But then someone outside has other plans. Maybe they're desperate or maybe they're hostile. But either way, they decide to try to force you out by setting fire to your home or to the area around it. Now, there are a few ways this kind of attack could play out, and each one is nasty in its own way. You might have someone tossing a Molotov cocktail through a window to start a fire inside, where you're most vulnerable. Or maybe someone decides to go for a slow burn approach and sets fire to trees, shrubs, or debris around your property, letting it spread gradually closer. Sometimes, it can be as simple as pouring gasoline along the perimeter, lighting it up, and watching to see if the flames push you out. The real danger with fire is that it spreads unpredictably and fast, so even if you think it's contained, it can jump and take hold in seconds. Flames aren't your only threat either. Smoke inhalation can knock you out quickly, making escape harder. To prevent fire from becoming a death sentence, focus on both fireproofing and having solid firefighting tools. Start by creating defensible space, which means keeping trees and flammable items far enough from your home so they don't provide fuel. Adding fire-resistant barriers like metal or stone is smart, especially for roofing and siding. You can go a step further with fire-retardant gels that coat your windows and doors and give them a protective layer. Having multiple fire extinguishers isn't just a good idea, it's essential. Keep them in strategic spots like bedrooms, entry points, and the kitchen. Consider adding an escape tunnel if you're one of the lucky ones. It's an option, something discreet that lets you evacuate if your main doors are blocked. And if you really want an edge, install an automatic fire suppression system like a sprinkler or mist system that's triggered by heat. A fire is unpredictable and brutal, but if you're prepared, you stand a much better chance of staying safe. All right, let's move on to a more personal, intense threat hostage situations or kidnapping attempts. It's not something anyone likes to think about, but in a full-blown crisis, desperation pushes people to extremes, and sometimes that means targeting others to get what they need or want. Imagine this situation. You're inside, hunkered down, trying to protect your family, but a group decides they're going to make a play for what you've got. They know that breaking in and forcing you to hand over resources isn't easy, so instead, they go for a darker tactic. They might attempt to take someone hostage or even kidnap a family member to use as leverage. Now think about what that does to your situation. You're immediately put in a position where you're not just protecting supplies anymore. You're trying to protect loved ones from direct harm. They could try to get you to give up everything by threatening the people you care about. And when you're in a crisis, that's a nearly impossible situation to handle. Hostage situations can also escalate quickly, especially if there are multiple attackers, or if they're organized and know how to intimidate. If they succeed, they control you, potentially forcing you into choices that go against every instinct. To guard against this, make sure your home's entry points are as secure as possible. Reinforce every door and window with strong materials and solid locks. For maximum security, use advanced locking mechanisms like biometric locks on key areas. A safe room is another must, ideally one that has secure doors, its own ventilation, and enough supplies for at least a few days. Even something as simple as sound devices that emit high-pitched noises can disorient attackers if they break in. For added safety, set up a hidden exit route from the safe room or even a secret communication dead drop with neighbors if you have to signal for help. Preparing for this is disturbing, but it can mean the difference between staying safe and losing control of the situation. Next up is a particularly scary one: chemical or biological attacks. Now, I know this sounds like something out of a movie, but in a worst-case scenario, you could face a situation where someone tries to drive you out by using chemical irritants like tear gas, or even worse, biological agents that can make you sick. Picture this. You're in your home, thinking you're safe, and then suddenly you smell tear gas seeping in from a broken window. Or you hear that your water source may be contaminated with something harmful. Chemical attacks might start suddenly, with tear gas or other irritants filling your home before you even know what's happening. In more extreme cases, an attacker might attempt to contaminate your water or food sources with harmful agents that you don't detect right away, turning your own supplies against you. Biological threats can be even slower, potentially exposing you to diseases or bacteria that take time to show symptoms, leaving you vulnerable to illness when you're least prepared for it. So how do you guard against these threats? First, make sure you have proper PPE, or personal protective equipment. Gas masks are critical, with filters capable of handling chemical and biological particles. Positive pressure systems in your home's ventilation are another line of defense, actively keeping contaminants from entering through doors and windows. It's also important to establish a decontamination zone, a dedicated area where anyone exposed can go through a full cleaning process before re-entering the main living space. This area should be stocked with disinfectants and soap, and everyone in your home should be familiar with the process. To keep air safe indoors, install high-grade filtration systems with HEPA and activated carbon filters. The more you can control airflow and prevent exposure, the safer you'll be if someone attempts a chemical or biological attack. Controlling what enters your space can be a game changer in these situations. Now let's talk about something straight out of history books, but still relevant today: a siege or blockade. In a crisis where resources are scarce, attackers might take a page from medieval warfare and simply surround your home, cutting off your access to supplies, fresh air, and possibly even communication, intending to starve you out, so to speak. Imagine being inside, surrounded on all sides, with no way to go in or out without encountering an immediate threat. Supplies start running low, tension builds, and you feel the walls closing in around you. Sieges are brutal because they play on both physical and mental endurance. Not only are you dealing with dwindling food and water, but you're also cut off from outside information, which can make you feel isolated and desperate. And even if you have supplies, the psychological toll of knowing you're trapped can start to erode morale. Attackers might even harass you with noise, lights, or other forms of psychological warfare to weaken your resolve and make you more likely to surrender. To withstand a siege, focus on creating a sustainable setup for food and water. Vertical farming or indoor hydroponic systems can provide fresh produce without needing outside resources, and hidden supply caches can be invaluable if your main stockpile is compromised. When it comes to water, rainwater collection systems or concealed water tanks are a must, along with ways to filter and purify any source. Keep a strict routine to structure each day, involving family or group members in small tasks to keep morale up. If you're able, coordinate with neighbors to pool resources and create a community defense. And lastly, try to maintain mental resilience. Remember, enduring a siege is often a matter of psychological endurance as much as physical resources. All right, next up, let's tackle the issue of drones. In today's world, drones are cheap, accessible, and if someone has hostile intentions, extremely effective for both surveillance and potential strikes. Imagine looking out your window and spotting a drone hovering nearby, or worse, hearing the faint buzz of a drone that you can't quite locate but you know is there, watching your every move. The thought alone is unnerving, but it goes beyond simple discomfort. Drones used for surveillance can reveal your daily routines, map out weak points in your defenses, and provide attackers with critical information about when you're most vulnerable. In a scenario where societal order has broken down, drones could even be weaponized to carry small payloads of harmful substances or basic incendiary devices, turning them into direct threats to your safety. While this might seem extreme, it's not impossible in the kind of crisis where resources are scarce and people resort to dangerous tactics. The constant hum of a drone can also add a layer of psychological pressure, making you feel exposed and like there's nowhere to hide. So how can you counter this? For starters, camouflaging your property can make a big difference. Use trees, shrubs, or camouflage netting to obscure outdoor spaces, reducing visibility from above. Think about where you're most visible from the sky and limit activities in those areas if you suspect drone surveillance. If you're worried about drones with thermal imaging, apply infrared camouflage material to conceal heat signatures, which makes it harder for attackers to pinpoint your location at night. For more active countermeasures, high-powered lights or lasers can sometimes disrupt drone cameras, especially in low-light conditions. A spotlight aimed at a hovering drone can temporarily blind its camera, making it difficult for the operator to get a clear image. Some people also invest in anti-drone jammers, which can disrupt the control signal between the drone and its operator, but keep in mind that these may be restricted in some areas. Using these tools responsibly and legally is essential if you're not in a serious SHTF scenario. With a combination of natural concealment and active disruption, you can reduce the threat of drone surveillance. Another real danger to bugging in is the threat of sabotage. Now, when we think of an attacker trying to harm us directly, we usually imagine physical force or intimidation. But sabotage is far more insidious and often more devastating in the long term, especially if they target something as essential as your water supply, solar panels, or even your heating system. Imagine going to check your water tanks or solar panels and realizing someone has tampered with them, leaving you suddenly without power or, even worse, without clean water. In a severe crisis, a broken or compromised system isn't just an inconvenience, it's a critical risk to survival. An attacker might poison your water source, for instance, contaminating it in ways that aren't immediately visible. You're left with limited access to clean water, and you might not even realize it until it's too late. The same goes for your power systems. If someone damages your generator or solar setup, you're left without the energy needed for basic survival tasks like cooking or staying warm. Preparation against sabotage starts with redundancy. Ideally, have multiple ways to access essential resources like water, power, and heat. For instance, if you rely on solar panels, consider keeping a small generator hidden away that you can rely on as a backup. Rotating through your systems regularly helps keep them maintained and operational, and doing regular checks can alert you to any signs of tampering. To keep these systems secure, lock down water tanks, fuel supplies, and other critical infrastructure. For added security, consider using sensors or alarms that will notify you if someone attempts to tamper with your systems. Think of this like setting up a layered defense where even if one system fails, you have backups in place to keep you going. Sabotage is a sneaky and potentially devastating attack, but by having multiple systems and regular checks, you can minimize the risk. Now, forced relocation isn't something most people imagine happening, especially if you're secure and prepared. But in a severe enough crisis, you might find that local factions, even rogue authorities, start claiming territory and forcing people out of their homes. This could happen if a powerful group decides your property would make a valuable asset, or even if they think taking control of your area is necessary to establish order. Suddenly, staying put isn't just about defending from outsiders, it's about proving your right to be there. Imagine someone showing up at your door not just with threats, but with some form of twisted authority, insisting you leave because they now control the area. They might use intimidation, or they might even try to make it official with paperwork or militia-style enforcement. In situations like these, resistance is complex, as you're not just dealing with opportunistic criminals. You're up against an organized group with resources. And in this case, going it alone makes you more vulnerable to forced relocation. To guard against forced displacement, start with legal preparation. Keep copies of essential documents like your property title and proof of residence in a secure spot. Ideally, one that's accessible if you need to prove your right to stay. Having a basic understanding of emergency laws or property rights can give you leverage if you're confronted with an attempt at forced relocation. Building community alliances is equally important. A united neighborhood or group of trusted individuals presents a much harder target for any group looking to take over territory. If you're in an area where people can work together, establish a plan for communication, defense, and mutual support if forced displacement becomes a threat. And always have a secondary plan ready, a go bag packed with essentials and a backup location where you can relocate if there's no other option. Forced relocation is an extreme scenario, but with legal groundwork and a strong support network, you'll be in a better position to resist or adapt. And now we come to what I'll call information warfare, something that doesn't require brute force but can be just as damaging. In a chaotic situation, misinformation is rampant, and sometimes all it takes to disrupt your safety is for someone to start spreading lies about you. They might tell neighbors you're hoarding supplies or make false claims about your intentions, making it so that others see you as a threat rather than an ally. This isolation can turn neighbors who could have been allies into people who fear or even resent you. Picture this. Someone spreads a rumor that you've got stockpiles of food and medicine and that you're refusing to share. Suddenly, your neighbors, who might have been potential allies, view you with suspicion and even anger. In a high-stakes situation, those suspicions can escalate fast, leaving you isolated or even targeted by people in your own community. Information warfare can be incredibly harmful because it erodes the trust and security you've worked to build in your area. The best defense here is establishing yourself as a trusted, level-headed source of information long before things go sideways. Build relationships with neighbors and cultivate a reputation for being helpful and approachable. This way, if rumors do start to circulate, people are less likely to believe false claims about you. Being someone who shares useful information, like tips on preparedness or news updates, can help cement you as a reliable figure in the community. If you find yourself the target of a misinformation campaign, don't respond with anger or defensiveness, as that often only fuels suspicion. Instead, provide calm, clear information that dispels any rumors. Keep documentation, like receipts or photos, of your supplies and activities, so if necessary, you can prove your intentions. Information warfare thrives on fear and division, so staying steady and transparent can go a long way in maintaining trust with those around you. And there you have it, a little of the darker side of bugging in and some of the intense scenarios you could face if things really go south. Each of these threats, from fire-based eviction to information warfare, poses unique challenges, but the right mindset and preparation can make a huge difference in how you handle them. Bugging in isn't just about staying put. It's about surviving whatever comes to your doorstep, whether that's a direct attack, psychological pressure, or attempts to control your resources. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on future updates. And make sure to check out my Facebook page too. I'm working to make it a stronger resource with ongoing updates, guides, and more to help you stay prepared. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay safe and stay prepared.